Welcome to Mask Utaro ji. I'm Payal Bhayana, and we are going to we're going to discuss about the grooming gang. Yes, the grooming gang, where they blame the Indian men also because they call them Asian men to defend the Muslim men, the Muslim Pakistani men. If ever the history of violence against women is written, then the story of UK grooming gang scandal should be on the top. 2 point, I think 2,50,000 underage white girls sexually exploited by the group of Pakistani men. Yes, Pakistani men. I want to make it very clear they are Pakistani men. And they can be Bangladeshi men too. They are Muslims. I'm very clear about that. And they stop giving calling them Asian men. They are not Asian men. They're only Pakistani Muslims, Bangladeshi Muslims who are doing this. And the way they defend it, that they're trying to protect the multiculturalism, or they say, let's not be Islamophobe. We are not going to accept it. So today I have with me Adit Kothari, Smita Deshmukh, and Nandini Bahri Dhanda. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Uh, अच्छा आदित एज यू फ्रॉम यूके एंड आप तो वहां अपने आप देख रहे हो तो आई वुड लाइक यू टू जस्ट गिव अस लाइक इन अ ब्रीफ जस्ट टेल अस what is this grooming gang of UK?
So first of all, I personally have a problem with the word itself, grooming gang. Grooming का मतलब होता है कि हम किसी को ग्रूम करते हैं, जैसे घोड़े को ग्रूम करते हैं या किसी पेट को अगर हम पालते हैं तो उसको ग्रूमिंग बोलते हैं. यहाँ पर दिस इज नॉट ग्रूमिंग. This is plain and simple Muslim rape gangs. That is what they are, and that is what they should be called. It's a different matter that the British media, in all of their political correctness and because they wanted to have certain sort of narrative around this, they ended up calling this grooming gag. But ultimately, इसमें होता क्या है? There are typically a bunch of Pakistani men who are either working in kebab shops, or they run their taxi businesses, or they're basically taxi drivers, and they prey on young British girls because they see them as easy meat. Typically, these white underage girls who they prey on come from either broken families, or they have some sort of emotional traumas. The mother is a single parent, or the father is not in the scene. So it's typically one of those scenes where they come in
Vulnerable girls,
initially. Yeah, they're vulnerable psychologically and emotionally, and as a consequence, they take advantage of them. Initially, they befriend them. They also become their boyfriends. They buy them drugs. They buy them alcohol. They treat them to movies and films and cinema and food. ये सब होता है. उसके बाद में धीरे धीरे they start using them to first pleasure themselves, and then once they are done with them, they basically get their relatives and their families and friends to get involved with these women. So that is the premise of how the modus operandi of how these gangs basically operate in the UK. Bye.
नंदिनी रॉदरहैम समझाओ आप मेरे को क्या हुआ था वहां पे.
I think the first time I did read about Rotherham was on a tube in one of those rags, which uh, those newspapers you just pick up, which are lying in those baskets along in the stations. And I remember reading about it and being so shocked at what they said about how the agencies handled it, that how the whole thing was the social welfare officer would go to a house where they'd got some complaint from, how they would see everything before then but were afraid to come back and write a report in case they were considered racist, how the police reacted to it, how the girls themselves were considered, as if they were just exaggerating stories or tales. They didn't have families which probably had social standing. They didn't have an education. They were just, what society treats as dispensable. And so they didn't want to rock the boat, because these children weren't really of some value to them. and they thought the harmony, social harmony, to maintain it, that was more important than actually getting down to the bottom of what was happening. And I remember reading about it and feeling almost terrified that if this could happen here, so what was happening in our country, where, you know, we see so much, hear so much, and we keep blaming our police and politicians. But here we were in Great Britain, and if they were treating it like this, it doesn't excuse what we are doing, but it made you feel how deep the rot is and how global it is. And I think that scared me and terrified me. And if you have young girls in the family, uh, absolutely different feeling how you look at the story and how you relate to it.
But they say like Muslim population there is only 3%. So what I was reading one of the articles, the person who was trying to defend this whole grooming gang, and like he said, they're like Muslim rapists. We shouldn't call them grooming gangs. They were saying the rest of the men were all British. They were also part of the whole nexus.
Yes.
How true is that?
So can I step in
Yeah.
here? So this is something that I've come across not just today, but over the course of the last 5 years, 5, 6 years since the time I've started following this. So the government, the Home Office, basically released a data where they basically tried to cover this up by saying that the 88% of the perpetrators of sexual crimes against children were basically white men, and out of which only 2% were Pakistani men, in sort of proportion to the Pakistani population in Britain. But that is how they were basically trying to provide cover fire to this entire scenario. Because what they did is, so within the crime scenario against children, there are various segments, there are various sectors. So you have, something like somebody would have child pornography, that would be classified as crimes against children as well. Child
Mhm.
rapes would be classified as crimes against children as well. Similarly, grooming gangs, which is a very significant but a small part of that entire criminal sort of
Nexus.
portfolio, uh, was predominantly it was taken over by the Pakistani men, which is what they did not highlight in their report, and which is what all of these people who are trying to deny this, they're using that particular government data to say that 88% of the crimes are basically committed by white men. Yes, of course they
Right.
are a problem, but they don't
Mhm.
they, they don't get disproportionate amount of institutional support. They don't get political support. In fact, if they're wrong, they should be treated as criminals, which is not happening with the Pakistani grooming gangs and the Muslim, the rape gangs which are operational in Telford, in Oldham, in Rotherham, etc., etc. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Smita, we were both discussing this grooming gang, the whole saga we were discussing. Uh, you were very angry. And then when I asked you that, would you like to join us to discuss this? And you said, yes. Why are you so angry?
No, because see, I look at it from two perspectives. First of all, I came across this subject in 2010. There's a family member of mine who is a doctor in Manchester, and he said he was visiting India, and he said, "Smita, I mean, has the Indian media? Is there anything about this grooming gangs in Indian media?" I said, "No." And I said, "Are you serious? I mean, trust me, majority of journalists, when they first heard, are you serious?" And I remember clearly going back home because he continues to visit, and every visit of his, we have been discussing this, how it has become. First it was Rotterdam, then it is Telford, then it is going in cities across the UK. I think what this whole 250,000 young teenage vulnerable white girls, falling prey to this, I would say a big racket of British Pakistani Muslims is like a classic case that nobody wants to talk about it, is because of that fear. If you look at every statement, whether it is the police, some of them who were in the police and no longer in the police, professors who are in academia, no longer in academia, those who were politicians in charge of certain cities in that period, if you look at their testimonies or statements, the common fear is the fear of Islamophobia. the fear of being called a racist, and the fear being called a bigot. So I think all these particular headlines were like everybody was fearful to such an extent they did not even realize that they were not even uh, unable to give justice to the girls. But sometimes the parents, the fathers especially, there have been so many documented stories when the fathers came out and started complaining or trying to lodge complaints, they were ignored and they were pushed out from the system to create the thing. And I remember I used to watch, and I continue to watch. I know people call him the a racist bigot, but Tommy Robinson's work, since and Tommy Robinson comes from Luton. If you know about what's happening in Luton now, Luton is, I think there's a complete takeover of Luton, and he started talking about it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, for over 15 years. And of course, Tommy has a very what can we say, controversial background. There is a mortgage case against him, and all that. But even today, even as we speak, Tommy is in jail for a contempt of court case, not the grooming gang case, a contempt of court case. I've never seen anybody in contempt of court case in jail in solitary confinement.
That's right.
Okay, the way he is being kept, and I can see that. But the overall, what can I say? The thing which surprises me is that when Nirbhaya came, the global story was the Indian rape culture, the rape culture of Indian men. Just 4 days ago, a writer from New York Times, even as this story broke on the second, if I'm not mistaken, first or the second, he immediately started writing about the rape culture of Indian men, completely ignoring this story. So
Hindu,
when
not even
Nirbhaya,
Hindu, Hindu men.
India is the
Yeah.
land of rapists. Okay, when Nirbhaya happened, India was the land of rapists. What are we going to call now this particular case? And the worst part is, of course, we can always debate the how well we have implemented the Nirbhaya law or whatever. But to see the complete systemic failure, the judiciary, the journalists, the woman like Jessie Phillips, who is in charge of the safety of women, she's an MP from Birmingham. I mean, she is again in denial. Keir Starmer is in denial. I must say, even the Conservatives don't come out with flying colors in this case. Also, the Conservatives also tried to push it behind the curtains. So, and it's interesting to see journalists saying, "Why are you all talking about it? It's been happening forever. For all you know, it must be happening now." Can you imagine, all this is happening in a first world country, and they keep on every event in India, one case, one rape case
In a
in
billion
one part of India is globalized into some kind of a story, and the British journalists are saying, "Why are you interfering in my country? Bloody hell, you interfered in my country. You came and ruled us and divided my country." So I'm just appalled, and the biggest letdown for me is the British media. I just cannot come to terms that these people call themselves journalists. Shame on them.
Okay. Adit, I saw one or two videos, and even on TV on BBC thing, I saw that when some of the some journalists are daring, they were questioning the politicians of the Labour Party, and I could see the politicians squirming, or they were trying to evade the question, and they were like pushing the journalist. Because is it because they want to don't want themselves to be labeled as Islamophobes, or is it the electoral thing which
It's
is
it's
making
it's
them?
both. I think it's obviously no rocket science that despite being only 3% of the population, there are almost 100 constituencies out of the 600 odd constituencies in Britain where the sort of Muslim vote becomes quite critical, especially the Pakistani Muslim vote, because they tend to vote as a consolidated chunk. Whereas rest of the population, including the sort of Indian diaspora that lives in Britain, they will vote as per their myopic interests. So, for example, if I am if I work as a doctor within the NHS, I will typically vote for the Labour Party and not for the Conservatives. However, if I'm working within the financial world, I will typically vote for the Conservative Party and not vice versa. So that is the way the electoral politics is designed, where the Pakistani Muslims and the Muslim vote in general is viewed as a consolidated chunk because they organize themselves really well. As a consequence, they're able to create interest groups. That those interest groups then sort of liaise with political parties, and they're able to sort of table their issues and their concerns. And this was one of the concerns that they basically tabled to the politicians and saying, do not highlight them because we fear, either we will make you pay electorally or there will be civil unrest. So, those are the kind of things they basically play hostage politics with.
Hmm.
The one thing that I also wanted to, because Smita Di basically spoke about this, about Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson was not the first person to actually come out and speak about this issue. There was a guy called Mohan Singh Khalsa, and
That's right.
he's a leader of an organization called Sikh Awareness Society, and he's been doing brilliant amount of work on this particular subject for at least the last 20 years. The first casualties of these grooming gang were basically Sikh
Girls.
girls. They were
Yeah.
not white sort of middle income or working class girls. There were Sikh girls who were basically lured by these Muslim gangs, and they were treated really, really badly. And as a consequence, a lot of the Sikh girls were also, they were forced to leave the UK, and as a consequence, they went and settled in places like Canada and the United States. Um, so Mohan Singh Khalsa, has been working on this for the last 20 years. Tommy Robinson goes into one of the gurudwaras where he was basically uh, he was giving a lecture on how these gangs basically operate, what is their psychological biases, and all of those kind of things. And that is where Tommy Robinson heard Mohan Singh Khalsa and sort of got inspired and said, let me also start working
Yeah.
for my community. So kudos to that man. He's done wonderful amount of work. He's almost like an unsung hero in the grand scheme of things because nobody knows him.
In fact, that's what I think Tommy Robinson recently said, that he learned from him that how the Sikhs are protecting their girls. He says the mothers are invited to the Gurdwara, the daughters are invited, the fathers are invited, and they tell them, be prepared for this. These are the signs. This is what you should look for. So he said, who is doing it for us? The
Hmm.
Sikhs have this gentleman, but who is doing it for us? And yeah, there's a lot to talk about this gentleman now. But you know
See,
what really struck me, sorry, the
no, no,
statement which stands out for me in this whole thing is, which sort of encapsulates the thinking, is this lady, this MP, I think her name is
Jessica.
Naz Shah.
Nas.
Naz,
Oh, Nasha.
Yeah.
yeah, she said
Yeah.
the British children must shut up for the sake of diversity. I mean, to even say something like that is so horrifying that you
And
can
coming
have a
from a
woman.
woman, it is, yeah.
Yes, I mean, it it
Well,
it's
that's
makes
not
you
the
stop
only
to
thing
think.
that's not the only thing they've said. They've in fact
Yeah,
gone ahead to say that, 11-year-old and 13-year-old and 15-year-old girls who were basically subjected to this kind of trauma had
yes,
consented to be
consent,
treated that way. I mean, look
consent,
at the amount of dishonesty that they must be harboring within themselves to
right?
have to say something like that. It's just remarkable. But yeah,
Even
it's
coming to
painful.
police, if I can just say one thing about I know that we shouldn't be talking about agencies. I mean, there are multiplicity of agencies. While the police have been extremely lethargic, trying to victim shame, trying, not taking the whenever the fathers especially have gone, there have been several documented cases in this report about fathers going to the police station and trying to rescue
All
their
the complaints.
daughters have not been encouraged. While all this is going on, UK has been filing ridiculous amount of cases on people writing inappropriate stuff on social media. Now people are booked. People are inside jail in the in the UK for like retweeting something which could possibly give rise to civil unrest. it reminds me of that 2.5 years of Mahavikas Agadi government here in Maharashtra. You could write something and you were just picked up and put in jail. But this is actually happening. I think there were more than 150 cases last year where people were picked up. Police going to people's houses and said, you posted something on Facebook, you retweeted something on Twitter, and it's inappropriate and you are in jail. Can you imagine this happening? Again, I'm saying in a first world country, these are the journalists who call India, the government of India, the leader, the prime minister of India intolerant. Show me one journalist from legacy media in the United Kingdom standing up against this nonsense. Show me
Smita, I
one
don't,
journalist.
Smita, I don't think this is so much of a problem of just legacy media or the British polity. If you look at it globally, the trend is very similar, where anybody who's connected to the left ecosystem will basically brand anybody on the opposite side as fascist, as conservative, as bigots, or racists, etc., etc. While they are the ones who are actually practicing all of those,
Yes.
all of the things that they are accusing the other of. Even in India, the Congress party should be, they need to take some responsibility for this, because the Ajmer rape cases, where over 250 school going girls were basically subjected to this kind of trauma, where the police, the policy makers, everybody was involved trying to cover this up in the garb of what? Political
Same,
correctness.
same reason.
So,
Because
so
Adit, because those khadims they belong to Congress, and
Farooq
they
Chishti.
would imagine even the IS officers and IPS officers' daughters were not spared. So you can imagine the rot we live in. Actually, another thing I want to talk about is I saw two videos. In one video, this girl was saying that these men used to come and rape me, and when I don't even remember the number of men who have raped me. So they used to come to the room. I used to get raped. I used to go clean myself and again lie down. She said I was so disinterested. Kati, I couldn't feel the pain. She was being sodomized. She was made to do such, you know, like I get choked when I talk about it. And there was another girl who said that my vagina was widened by some pump, so that three men could enter me in one go. I read about this.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep the whole night. I said like, and still the politicians, the cops are not interested, and they're not showing no
But
sympathy, no empathy.
I don't you think there is something? I mean, this is these little pockets all over Britain, no longer little pockets all over. This is happening here. This is happening certainly in other parts of Europe. This is not just, restricted to Great Britain. Uh, this is happening in America. Is there, do you see something deeper in this whole, the way they whitewash it, brush it under the carpet, and this revival of this whole thing coming back again? Do you see it because even in America there is this huge shift, and we're all waiting for the Epstein list? That is it all connected, interconnected in some way or the other?
No, I don't look at the Epstein thing to this. This is
No,
look
I
at it.
don't
No,
mean
I'm
personally. I mean with child trafficking, child prostitution,
the
getting
Epstein
children.
the Epstein list is definitely coming. Maybe on 21st Jan, the Epstein list is coming. So no, I look at it. I completely look at it as a situation where certain parts of a holy book are used. The white or all the non-ethnic groups beyond a certain ethnicity are looked as women. They are literally looked as trashed, and they deserve it. If you see some of the testimonies of the accusers, even in the court, they deserved it. These women anyway go out wearing provocative clothes. I cannot believe that a 11-year-old would go out wearing provocative clothes, whatever. And the concept of consent, that makes that six, like, it is so sickening, because if I'm not mistaken, Adit can tell us, the age of consent in the UK is 17. So I don't know how a 11, 12-year-old can actually say or talk about consent. The thing which disturbs me is we are talking about it again because the owner of the biggest social media platform in the world decided to like shed light onto this case, and everybody is discussing it not. But I really don't know in what way there will be, whether it will stop, because people always say the good members of the community, I don't know where they are. They have not come out. They are silent. For all you know, we are discussing it, things may be going around at the same thing. I don't see, beyond all of us outraging and discussing it and debating it, there is a chance of early elections, there is a campaign for it, that is all fine, there is a political fallout. I don't know whether there is a legal fallout, but beyond that, I don't see this case going anywhere. Because the will is not there within the society. I don't see a champion within the British society and within the system to come to give justice to these girls. I don't see
So,
that happening.
so you know what the problem is? So, we all remember the Sandesh Khali rape cases that happened in Bengal, right? There was so
Yeah.
much of noise made about it. Ultimately, there was absolutely nothing that happened, despite everybody knowing that, women of that part of world, they've fallen into becoming casualties of political violence and political opposition for, God knows, 40 years since the time CPIM had ruled Bengal. But we don't speak about them. The reason why we don't speak about them is because there is no relatability. The intelligentsia, the elite, the middle class don't relate to those people. But the moment RG Kar happened in Calcutta,
Mm.
everybody was out on the streets because
Well,
they
what's
saw
special
this.
about that?
They saw this as something that, if it can happen to that doctor,
Mm.
tomorrow it can be my daughter, tomorrow it can be my niece, tomorrow it can be my sister. So that relatability came into play. That relatability doesn't exist within the collective conscience of Britain at this point, because they don't relate to these young girls who come from broken families, or families which are basically independent, which is why they don't relate to them. They can't sort of relate to the pain and the agony that they've gone through, and that is the worst part of things. So despite everything that is happening on social media, if you come down and speak to an average man on the British street, they've got absolutely no opinion on this particular subject, and that is the sad and that is the tragic part of things.
But then,
So,
Adit, if I may say the same thing, that look at the doctor. After all that happened in RG Kar, where are we today with that case? So, whether it's a case you relate to or don't relate to, I don't think there is any empathy with any strata of society for women or children who are going through this, because even nothing has happened to. Has the case progressed, Smita, in the
No, but
RG Kar?
at
No,
least people were out on the
no.
street outraging, holding the government hostage, and demanding accountability. So
Yes,
Mamata Banerjee was forced to sit down with those junior doctors and address their concerns. That has
yes.
never happened during the Sandesh Khali riots.
are they? But what
But
happened and
what
what happened to
happened
the
after that?
CBI?
See, with
One of
us, it's very easy to come out in the street and to shout and scream and all this, but nothing.
what was the end result? What was the
Well,
end
hopefully
result?
more checks and balance. I mean, ultimately, what did they
Oh,
demand for?
come
They
on,
demanded
Adit.
for
In
checks
West
and
Bengal, let's
balances.
not go there. Let's not talk about West Bengal. You think some kuch West Bengal mein hoga? You tell me one thing, Adit. CBI ने पूरा clean chit दे दिया है. You tell me. Let's not go to RG Kar.
Yeah,
Like, let's not talk
that's
Yeah,
because
yeah,
true.
no,
West
no,
Bengal. I
that
don't
was
want
just a
to
figure of
discuss.
speech, but
Discussing West Bengal is such a waste of time, according to me. वहां
I
कुछ
got
भी
you,
होता है
yes.
उसका कोई एंड रिजल्ट यही हो. अभी देखो इलेक्शंस हुए हैं, बाइपोल हुए हैं, सब कुछ हुआ है.
Sab jeet gaye.
Mamata Banerjee won all the seats. So where's the anger? Where's the frustration?
So
Where's the
you
change we
have
want?
to imagine how incompetent and how incorrigible the other side must be. Trust me, I come from Bengal, so I understand Bengal politics. And the BJP and the Congress are absolutely, they stand no chance against a Mamata Banerjee because, let's not talk about Bengal
Mm,
politics.
mm.
Yeah,
To
yeah. Let's not.
Yes.
let's come back to grooming gangs again and
Acha, now,
Muslim rape
Smita,
gangs.
I want to know, like, this thing hasn't stopped. It's we just can't say that it's happening only in UK. The other countries
Oh,
are also going through the same phase. Sweden, we don't
I
talk about
think
Sweden. You don't talk about Germany. Elon Musk is not talking about France.
No,
Elon
really?
Musk is talking about trans, but see, you know what I feel? That finally it took somebody, let's say, who has over 200 million followers, to bring this the UK case out in the mainstream. The UK journalists are still like, why are you all talking about it? I mean, I remember this brilliant book written by Douglas Murray on the fall of the Europe. I mean, there's a big chapter on this in 2017. We discussed it in 2017. We forgot, and of course, Murray has gone and written so many brilliant books after that. My this is my biggest concern. This is supposed to be allegedly the first world, okay? And what the first world is doing to their own women, I would say, to their own family system, to their own judiciary. Today, the talk in mainstream media in UK is that Musk is trying a regime change operation in UK. Musk is, of course, supporting the alternative party in Germany. Musk is openly is anti-Trudeau. I mean, it's out in open. You don't have to say. Musk is a very pro Meloni supporter. So Musk is trying to bring together, all the conservatives or all the right in Europe. And Musk is supporting Tommy, but Musk is basically saying take Tommy out of the prison because this thing, but Musk probably doesn't know that Tommy is inside for another story, another case, nothing to do with the grooming and case. But Musk is totally supporting, very very cleverly supporting the Reform Party with which Nigel Farage. But Farage is totally worried about Tommy coming out and grabbing the entire limelight. So the British media is, forget about this case, but even today the British media is in denial, about that. So many people spoke about this, which shows me that these girls are never going to get any justice. It's going to get worse. And perhaps, as Adit said, when the cases will come to your doorstep in London or in and around London, then maybe there could be a protest or anything like this. But I don't see these men being extradited. I don't see these men being further prosecuted or anything. It will continue. It is, and the next time somebody lectures you about law and order, about governance, about judiciary, about safety of women in Asia or in third world countries, please show them the mirror. Please show them the mirror.
No, you can only show the people the mirror who are willing to look into the mirror. So, you can say anything you like, nothing is going to change the way they think. So, I don't think,
And Nandini, we are blaming Starmer for it. We are saying he's ignoring it and he's part of this whole thing and he's part of the nexus or whatever. But we are forgetting Rishi Sunak. He was also the prime minister. What did he do?
100%.
yes.
All this was happening under his nose too.
And
But
he
I
made
think
some big
he
promises.
and that Suella Braverman, is that how you pronounce her surname?
Suella
Well,
Did
Braverman.
bring up, yeah, she did bring up some part of it and was eased out. No?
Well, the only guy who
They
demonstrated
attacked
some.
Suella. They attacked Suella. Suella was called the racist, right wing.
Yes.
She was humiliated and character assassinated so much, though she tried to come up as an alternative to Rishi Sunak. I mean, she really stood up to Rishi Sunak's soft policies. But there was so much character assassination of her
And
that
so much
she's out.
derision.
I don't see her around at all.
So much derision that you yourself are an immigrant and now you want to shut the doors on other immigrants, and I mean that kind of guilt shaming we have in this country as well. But I think from what I know sitting here that she did some bit to it, but I don't know about Rishi Sunak's role
No,
in
so
it.
I think Suella Braverman spoke about this,
Okay.
but when it came down to action points, she didn't have enough time within her tenure to sort of act upon this. The only man within the last 14 years who's shown any sort of spine to actually deal with this issue, you would be all surprised, was this guy called Sajid Javid. He was the Home Secretary briefly, and he was the one who basically said that it'll be extremely wrong to ignore the ethnicity of the grooming gangs in North England. And because at that time we had another sort of problem called the windfall rush issues. uh, because that came into the mainstream media, all of this went into the back burner. But he was the only guy who actually wanted to do something about this. but just didn't have enough opportunity to go ahead and
Right.
do everything that he had in plan. But Rishi Sunak, before his campaign, spoke about it. He highlighted that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. He gave a grand speech about this. He said we need an action task force to deal with this issue. But during his tenure, again, there was absolutely nothing done. So it's extremely rich of the conservatives at this point of time to come and say and say that we need a public inquiry on this issue, because you guys were sitting on this for the last 14 years and you've done absolutely jack shit. So uh, don't be hypocrites at this point.
But
Um,
what's the palace doing? Nothing coming from the
well,
palace.
the palace lives in their own bubble. The palace, I don't think has any political reality. They are.
This has nothing to do with politics.
They will not.
No,
They will
no,
Grooming
not
this
gang
speak
is
is
about
nothing.
this.
politics. It has got
Huh?
to do with politics.
They will not speak about this because they don't want to be seen as against the
Yeah.
principles of
This is a
multiculturalism,
woman
right?
issue. This is the issue
The
related to
sovereign
accommodation.
always speaks about climate change and all
Mm.
the though it was
All the goody.
insinuated it was
Hey,
insinuated
don't
somewhere
talk
there
about
that
women right and all,
the
women's right and all
intervention
rights
of
and all.
King Charles. It was insinuated. I don't see this happening. I don't see
But
it
I
happening.
even women rights, children's rights, it's all got to do with politics and how expedient it is to your politics. So and the palace certainly, from what I know, they
And
say what the government of the day,
you think the palace, the king who has a brother called Prince Andrew will talk about women and women's rights and women's safety? The king would say it will open a Pandora's box on this Prince Andrew and Epstein. So there was a case which they, they shoved it down. So
Well,
that's
So
the
now
in
let's
in
reason.
in 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 addition to all of that, King Charles himself is a massive, patron of the Muslims in Britain.
Mm,
So, he will not come out to openly advocate against for a public inquiry on this particular issue. So, forget about that happening.
hey, but Adit, tell me, palace has staff which is like who are Muslims.
Yeah,
They have
yeah,
Muslim.
yes.
absolutely, 100%. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
No, no, no.
some of the
These
most
immigrants.
fiercest voices that have come out and spoken about this issue. For example, Vasik. I don't know if you know Vasik Palji. He used to work for Henry Jackson Society as a policy researcher. Um, and he was one of the proponents who actually came out and spoke very strongly about this issue. There was a imam of a particular mosque as well. I'm forgetting the name of the mosque, who came out and he came out and said that the ethnicity of these grooming gangs is alarming, and we as a community need to introspect and need to hold ourselves accountable. But those people are not taken seriously by the politicians and the policymakers. The
Yes.
policymakers, who do they take serious? The feral individuals who
Always,
play.
always. They're
And
not
that is
considered the true voice of the people
exactly.
because that's what
But
we
do
do here
you
too.
guys remember? But do you guys remember this case in Germany on New Year's Eve? What happened? One of you can discuss on this like that.
Cologne Wala.
It
Huh.
was it was in Cologne, 2016 or 2017, and these girls were out celebrating New Year's Eve, and I think there is a particular word tarashum or tarannum, I don't know, which is used where the men of a particular ethnicity, they will circle these women around and they will sexually assault them. Even I wonder what happened to that case. I have no idea. Similar cases
850 girls, 850
yeah,
wives.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But we don't know what really happened to that case. So nothing really goes to. I said there's no ultimate. Europe is. I'm telling you, it's nothing to do with a particular country. But I don't think Europe is going to fight back unless we don't know what is going to happen. And I to see this the beginning of the in terms of it reflects so many things of family values, society, law and order, governance. But as a society, this is perhaps the worst. It's like the worst particular case where I see, if you are a British woman, if you are a British man today with young teenage girls or young girls, you will be seriously worried whether this is a country. And I think Konstantin Kissin, who's one of the big intellectuals of our time, is actually saying that people are leaving Britain. Good people are leaving Britain.
And going where?
UAE,
Yeah.
Saudi, they are safer zones.
That's the irony of it.
Seriously, I mean, can you believe this? I know somebody. My sister
That's
had
called
a very
Tarush.
my sister in a
That's
small
called
village in Maharashtra had a very interesting take. She said that well, the British, they created Pakistan and now karma is hitting them back. Can you imagine this? Somebody
Oh,
Wait,
saying
but
this?
I
that's
remember
very
this
sad.
a friend of mine who's in London. His wife was fed up of these, namaz on the road again, and then she found too many Muslims here in London. So she said, "Let's shift." So he said, "Okay, let's take the car and let's go to Paris, let's go to France, Germany, and we'll see where we'll settle." And first incident that happened with her in France was she was not, her head was not covered. So these three Muslim guys came to her and they said, "Cover your head." She said, "Now where do we go in Europe?" So they came back to London. Now they're coming, planning to come back to India. So Europe's gone, I
You know,
think.
the other worrying aspect which has absolutely received no focus is the British schools, because that is the sort of epicenter where all of this erupts. You know,
The
it's the
incubation.
schools. There is a sense of othering that exists. So if you're friends with a Muslim, and those Muslims have three or four other friends, they will typically ask you to embrace certain elements and certain principles of Islam. Otherwise, they will not befriend you. So those kind of things are seeping into the British schooling system, and that is not often spoken about, and that leads to this sort of grooming as well. So grooming
Hmm.
starts at a very, very early year for
I think
any
first
child.
of all, we have to not call it grooming, as you said.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Grooming
Sorry, yeah.
is in fact,
It's a
Very
positive.
refined word. Huh?
it's that no, it's not. I've begun to dislike that word because it brings in so many kinds of images in your
Connotations.
mind.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's
Achha,
amongst
Nandini,
all the statements, I mean, amongst all the examples which came out, cases rather which came out, the thing which really shook me was this case of besides the schools, I feel that the care homes, the
yes,
attacks mostly also happened largely on these teenage girls in care homes across these cities. And there was a case of this girl who was abducted and passed around, raped multiple times. She actually ran from this particular house and tried to go back to the care home. And when she got down, the cabbie said that, she said, "I don't have any money to pay." So she asked the care home, that warden or something to pay. And she says, "No, I'm not going to pay for this. You tell me where were you?" And she started questioning her. And amidst all this, the her attackers came to know that she's back in this care home. They came and abducted her and took her back again. I mean, it looks like a movie script, but I'm telling you, it's unbelievable, and it's documented in this very very disturbing cases which Douglas Murray has been talking across in his book.
but Nandini, we've spoken about its electoral का बात कर लिया हमने. फिर बहुत politician, judiciary सबका बात कर लिया. You tell me one thing, can all this happen without money being involved? कहीं से तो ये फाइनेंशियल एंगल देखना पड़ेगा हमें, फाइनेंस का एंगल कहीं से तो मनी का है. अदरवाइज व्हाई विल दीस पीपल गो क्रेजी? मतलब
मनी
इतना
का तो
ज्यादा, लाइक
बिल्कुल है.
जस्ट बोरिंग
yeah,
सच अ.
because there will be money, especially when you close everybody's mouth along the way. What is it that is keeping everybody shut up? It's not just goodwill and diversity. There has to be more than that. I would think that I think there's something so much deeper. And this is just the first year. These these horrible rape gangs are just the first year in the long hierarchy of what is happening to children, women, sex trade, trafficking, pornography. There is much more to this than just these 10 men in one home with five girls or whatever it is. It has to be a system which supports you and allows you to do this, and
And
fearless.
yeah,
So what is it? What is that system that allows you to do it? You know?
And
So the
Nandini,
system.
did you see yesterday on, sorry, just a second, Adit. Yesterday I was reading this post on Twitter that this president of Romania, he won the election, but the judges made it null and void, the
Yeah.
election, because he spoke about stopping, he wanted to stop the human trafficking. Imagine the rot. Imagine the rot. It's like, this whole thing is disturbing me a lot.
I think, but what has come out in this whole thing, as Smita was saying, that we have come to see that whatever you might say about us in the third world, you only have a veneer on yours, but you're worse because you had all the opportunity, which, we with our numbers, with the way we are, the way our history is, the way our politics are run, we still have excuses. The so-called first world has no excuse. And if this is what they're showing us, it's very scary. It's,
You know, I also look at it in such a way that how smartly these words, were created, phrases were created. Islamophobia, how deep it is. I mean,
It was
I'm in
all
media.
planned. It was done under, like, it was
I'm
all
telling you,
planned.
no, I'll tell you something. I'm in media and I have one leg in academia. I'm telling you that if the thing that affects all these people is to be called racist. They may actually die than being called a racist. I'm telling you. I was called a racist many, many years ago because I said I would like to support a candidate for the Prime Minister's post outside the Gandhi family. I think we're done with it, and I would rather see somebody like Narendra Modi. I was called racist, bigot. I lost all my friends in the media. So the repercussions are as all this ecosystem of phrases which they will stick on your head. Islamophobic, transphobic. Oh, we've not the gender game is another level only. Transphobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigot. Once if you come out of it now, if you decide I don't care, then only I think there is a scope of doing some genuine campaigning. I think the activists
emancipation.
are into it, the media is into it, the academics are into it, the politicians. So let's not talk about it. But I think these labels were created to ensure that these
To hide these
horrendous
crimes,
men
yeah. To hide
never
these crimes.
ever come to ever to the stands of justice. These phrases were actually created to protect these men. This
Adit,
case is a case that they created these phrases of racism, bigotry, transphobia, Islamophobia, all to protect the horrendous crimes of these men. And this is a classic. This case is a classic example.
Adit,
You know
you
the
think कोई action होगा? You think कोई action होगा?
Look, unless the civil society at large connects and creates a movement around it, nothing will happen. So this will again die out a sort of a very unceremonious death, and we will all forget about it. Those poor women who've had to endure and suffer all throughout their childhood. I mean, I think about the 11-year-old girl who's saying that, I've been raped so many times that I've forgotten the count. And when you think about those kind of things, and if it doesn't ruffle your feathers, you've lost your humanity. And it seems like, we've simply lost our humanity. Those people have basically become a blind spot for us. We don't care about them. That is
So
the that
what
is the
is it?
message.
So
So
what is
end
it that
result
will
is
wake
what?
up
What is
British
the end
society?
result?
एंड रिजल्ट कुछ नहीं होगा. हम बातें करेंगे, थोड़े बहुत एकेडमिक रिसर्च होंगे, कोई कोई लोग इसके.
Can't hear you.
Sorry,
Adit,
can you hear
can't
me
hear.
now? No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just getting a call. I was just saying that, we will talk about it for a few days, and then we will forget about it. It'll, be in the back burner. And again, something new happens. We will have a renewed energy to speak about this again. That is the way it's been functioning. Until we
But
take this to the polity and we make them accountable, we ask them compelling questions. We ask a Rishi Sunak, a Keir Starmer, or whoever it is. We ask them, what are you actually planning to do about this? Are you ever going to give justice to these women who've suffered horrendously through their childhood? There is nothing that is going to happen, and we are not doing that. We're not raising
no,
those
but
compelling questions to the polity.
do you think there'll be a drastic change the immigration policies or anything like they'll
नहीं, वो
stop
तो
it
अभी नहीं
or
हो रहा है.
तो
Why
इलीगल
immigration?
इमिग्रेंट्स तो आ रहे हैं ना, इलीगल आ
It,
रहे हैं, बोट्स तो एक्सेप्ट हो रही है ना, तो वो
yeah,
तो
but then
कॉप्स ही
see,
कर रहे हैं ना,
see,
योर
now
योर
we're
आर्मी योर कॉप.
connecting, now we're connecting two separate dots. Illegal immigrants coming into the UK is a separate issue altogether. They haven't per se. We've not seen many cases where they've been involved in any sort of rape gangs as such. Yes, they've been involved in crimes against women and children in a different aspect, but they don't function as in this sort of a coordinated manner as we've seen in cities like Oldham, Telford, Rotterdam, etc., etc. So that's a whole different case altogether. These guys are not illegal immigrants. They are British citizens. They hold British passports. They are dual nationality holders. They have British and Pakistani passports. And that is who they are. They are British citizens. They need to be treated as British subjects and criminals at the end of the day, and they need to be booked under the law. There have been so many criminals who were booked under these grooming gangs, from 80s, I think. 1982 या 1983 का कोई केस था जिसमें इनको 2016 में इनको सजा हुई थी. उसमें से 2 तो पाकिस्तान चले गए. So they're staying in Pakistan. No, nobody cares about them. We've forgotten about
I
those two
I
characters.
also believe there are two who were to be deported, but who still live very close by to their victims.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Who
and they're
yeah haven't
shopping in
been
the same
removed.
and they're
Yes,
shopping in the same malls as them. They see them. So imagine the
yeah,
kind of intimidation, the kind of feeling that these victims actually feel seeing
yes.
their perpetrators shop in the same shopping malls and grocery stores as they are. It's, it's remarkable.
So, sitting here, because this, I don't know why this thing has touched so many of us here. Sitting here, you feel, you can see, a sort of a people sort of head towards this abyss
Mm,
and just fall, free fall. We see this from here unless there is some reaction. And what is it that's going to make the British people react and do something? Let's ask this question from India today. What is it that is going to make them react and do something?
But Nandini, my cousin was here, so I asked her about grooming gang thing, and she was not aware of it. Then there's another friend of mine, her son and daughter-in-law are there in London. I asked them, we were on a con call and I asked them about this thing. They were not aware of this thing. Then my another friend's daughter was here. And when I spoke to her about grooming gang, she started telling me what Jews are doing to Palestinians in
Oh, yeah.
Gaza. And she was saying the 7th October thing to 2023 thing
conspiracy
is
theory.
all concocted by Jews because they want to conquer
So
Palestine.
there's
Gaza.
your answer. So there's your answer. Those people who fill the streets of London,
They are part of the problem.
standing for the Palestinians, where is the other lot who's going to stand up for your own children? I mean, we're not talking about Israeli children, we're talking about your own children. So there's nobody to stand up for your own children, but you're going to stand up for from the river to the sea when you don't know which river,
Hmm.
which sea, but you'll stand up for them. But what about your British children?
But
But
there, wasn't there a narrative? Wasn't there a narrative during the protest that rape is resistance? There was this
Yes,
one particular thing. Indeed, there was this one professor who goes around with a placard saying rape is not resistance. The dehumanizing of all victims
yeah.
by this particular ethnic group. Of whether they are raped or whether they were killed in during a music fest, the dehumanizing of them by the champions of free speech and human rights is actually the story.
अगली
in
दफा आपसे कोई पूछे कि
2023,
अगली दफा आपसे
sorry,
कोई
in
पूछे.
2023, I had gone to, at 23, no, 22, I had gone to Banaras. So we had these two girls from London there, and so we landed on my birthday eve. We were all having a drink together, and then Samir and this friend of mine, he asked them about the grooming gang. They knew nothing about it.
No, so there is this sort of amnesia because we're not very well aware of the plight of these women. So that is there. But मैं स्मिता जी को एक बात कर रहा था कि अगली दफा कोई हमसे पूछे कि भाई हिंदुस्तान ने इस दुनिया को क्या दिया है, तो उनको जरूर बताइएगा महात्मा गांधी दिया है. All of these guys who are saying that rape is resistance, they're after all minions of Mahatma Gandhi. Tragic.
Oh, and
It's a very disturbing week to see this. And whatever friends I have in the UK in terms of media says, why are we discussing this? Because there is a conspiracy. We are discussing this because Elon Musk is doing this. But it's like forgetting the real story. They are
Yeah, so
so
they want to shoot
outrage,
the
deliberate.
the
messenger.
outrage is on him rather than
The
on the crime.
delusion of this, the left is unbelievable on this subject.
No empathy, no sympathy for these girls, no care for these girls. Oh God,
So,
it's so it's scary. We are living. Just see the world we are living in. Just see, callous world, cruel, callous world. Yeah.
I
so what
wanted to do
happened?
a solo trip to Germany and my Parsi, Parsi, what can you say, like a travel, company, owner of a travel company who always books. He says, Germany में मत जाने का, solo trip नहीं करने का Germany. Then I said, where should I go? He rejected all the destinations I wanted to take a solo trip. I said, I think I'll be home only. He
No,
said,
no,
solo trip.
Southeast Asia is
हम
very nice and
risk नहीं
safe.
तुम तुम
लेगा.
श्रीनगर चले तुम श्रीनगर चले जाओ पत्थर पड़ेंगे पत्थर तुम्हें वहां पे जाओ तुम पत्थर खाने वहां पे हर जगह ही कुछ ना
Unbelievable.
कुछ पत्थर मारेंगे वो तुमको वहां पे भी हर जगह इन्होंने पत्थर ही मारने हैं हम लोग को
सोलो ट्रिप नहीं करने का
नहीं नहीं करने
यूरोप.
घर में बैठो घर में बैठो कुंभ जाओ महाकुंभ
हाँ, महाकुंभ.
So
Seriously.
what happened? What happened? Did the how have we suddenly started looking at the left like this and all the people like this and accepting them as that they believe in this terminology, they believe in this lexicon? How come we have suddenly woken up to it? Where has that
We are
where did that
always fearful.
social
I
media
can only say
social
about
media
myself.
has
I can only say about myself since I'm in academia as well as in media. That is the thing that the fearful thing that they do to you. Oh, Smita Deshmukh, racist, racist. She supported Narendra Modi, racist. So don't call her, don't invite her, take her out of the system. That's the way they work. I'm telling you. So this case, I don't see it happening. And if the civil society comes on the street, I would be really surprised. So I think my only hope, and it's terrible thing to say, that for a political movement and the reform movement, if it comes full fledged with a little more, like the people support reform a lot in the UK. The Reform Party is perhaps because the Conservatives have no credibility on this subject. The Labour, the less said it better. So I think there is a third option in the UK. If they come, if there are early elections, if at all there is one, then we could see something. But that should be one of the things he promises.
I will
what do you
disagree
think?
with you.
Is not a big player in British politics. So let's see how this whole plays out in the next
So,
6 months.
so I am a member of the Reform Party, and I will say this as
Okay.
a member of the Reform Party, but that even they are not serious about this subject. They don't care about it.
ओ गॉड
Nigel
आदित्य
Farage
प्लीज
का
मेरे को लगा कुछ होप आ दे रही थी स्मिता तुमने तो वो भी खत्म कर दी
Okay.
नहीं नहीं
Tell me
Nigel
why don't they care about it? Why?
because there is no electoral benefit out of this. Nigel Farage in his interview what a couple of weeks ago
ओ गॉड
said that you
इलेक्टोरल
cannot
इलेक्टोरल
you cannot ignore the Muslims because at the rate that they are growing today, 75% growth in every 10 years is what their record is approximately. That is what he said. He said by 2050, the kind of population that you're looking at, the population mix. So imagine with this 7% population, if they're controlling 100 seats today, by 2050 it's going to be a whole different ball game. The whites, the Indians do not go out and vote. We do not take council jobs. We do not take jobs as teachers. These people are doing all of that. So
So the rest of us should lie down and die?
unless we truly understand what the risks are, and unless we understand what the threats are, and we start acting upon those threats, there's no reason why any political party will pander to us because we do not give them that sort of electoral relevance. So
You
it's a
know
big
what?
trouble.
I have also reached in this last 1 week. I've discussed this so many times with so many people, and honestly, the thing I only would learn from it is that there are lessons for India, definitely. Of course, the Love Jihad is not the campaign called Love Jihad. Though these are two different things, but the modus operandi is very much the same. There are a lot of funds which are used to lure a particular girl, spend time with her, lure her. Then there is, of course, sometimes there are names which are changed to
I
lure
wanted to
them.
ask you this question.
The marriage has to take place. Then by that time, of course, that girl
Love
has to
jihad is more
consent.
about conversion. Love
No,
jihad
but
So
is
I,
more
that,
I,
about conversion.
no,
I
no, no,
actually
but
had
then
this.
Modus operandi is one.
let me just finish. I'm not saying that these are very similar cases, but there are lessons to be learned because the modus operandi is similar. Funds being used to lure them, funds being used to ensure that they marry. Then of course there's conversion, and of course sometimes the women they are not alive in many cases. There are cases in which they are protected and brought back into the Sanatan Dharma, but there are lessons for us in this, and we should learn something from this, and never ensure that society at large should ever remain what I will say, dehumanize the victims in this way. That is the lesson we can learn from this.
And
So,
I think
so
the
I
other lesson is that we cannot be held hostage to a, you know, to a faith which which I
which
can't be
tries to
polite
impose
in
a
this matter. Yes,
totalitarian
but
regime. Yeah.
and I think if anything happens, it will come from two parts of the world. It'll come from us, and it'll come from the Jews, because it's only we who are going to are then left to fight this battle. If everybody is going to sort of succumb to electoral politics, then there's no hope for this world.
So here's what I wanted to ask you guys as well. In between on social media, there were various handles which are posting a rate card or a chart consisting of rates against conversion of women. So for a Brahmin
Yeah,
girl,
in
you had
India,
X
yeah, it
amount.
happens.
For a
Yeah,
Jain girl, you had X amount. For a Sikh girl, you had X amount. Was that truly done, or was
Brahmin
that?
ka rate is 8 lakhs.
Yeah.
Brahmin ka rate is 8 lakhs.
And that is real. That is what
Yes,
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Okay.
I'll
that's how
get
the
you that
family
list.
benefits.
Adit, I'll get you that
Wow.
list. It has एक किसी मस्जिद का नाम भी है उसमें. I'll
And
उसमें
get
that
you.
is why entire families are involved in this. So if a man is going out with a fake name, then his entire family is also puts up that facade, and there are stories where the girl goes to his house and sees a little mandir, this, that. Everybody is involved in the game of deception,
Wow.
and then the family
उसमें
benefits. Huh?
उसमें जैन लड़के का कन्वर्जन का भी कोई है क्या कुछ
नहीं,
रेट?
लड़कियों का ही
नहीं,
है.
oh shit. Okay,
Uh,
damn. I lose
But
out.
just one more thing. While there is a modus operandi
Sorry,
of
Aditya, really?
the
Sorry, Adit.
I know.
Sorry,
I'm
sorry.
very disheartened.
I was just telling you that while there is the modus operandi, it's very similar from from the gangs or whatever. The system is very much the same. Even media till 10 years ago, the media was in denial. There is always victim shaming. The media is in denial. This is a right wing conservative conspiracy and all that. It's the
Communal.
same
You're
story.
being
It's
communal.
the
I to get
same
that tag for
story.
everything.
same
I get this
language.
tag. For
So
everything.
I think India must learn. We must keep our eyes open, and I hope all the women activists, lawyers, women journalists, everybody is watching this case very, very closely. Every country in the world is going to face this at some point. They may be already facing. We don't know. We don't know.
Sweden's
You know,
gone to the
Smita, when
dogs,
you
yeah.
say women lawyers, women journalists, women this, I think I no longer pay heed or think that, some of the gender makes a difference in this case at all, because some of the worst comments and attitude
Yeah,
and
true.
reaction has been from women who have shamed these victims. I think it
Yeah.
just needs decent human beings to fight this and to overcome it. I mean,
Yeah.
I no longer believe that only women care for children and only women will stand up for children. I think it has to be now a
You,
society which stands
I've
up.
always maintained this that uh, टेररिस्ट और एक्सट्रीमिस्ट से तो आपको खतरा है ही, बट आपको
Hmm.
ज्यादा खतरा उनसे है जो उनको कवर फायर देते हैं, who provide them with the
Hmm.
intellectual cover fire.
Yes.
It's people like Srinivas
Adit,
Jain and
don't
all
say
of these
this.
people. It's
Don't
people
say
like
this.
them who write books
Hmm.
like, Love Jihad is a myth, and they go on to provide cover fire to all of those people who indulge in these sort of criminalities. They are the bigger problem of our society. And that's the people that we need to tackle first.
I
And
always
the
say they are the
mothers who bring up
snakes.
these men, and the
Yeah.
mothers who bring up these men, and the sisters who defend them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So uh,
No, like I always say, they are the snakes, and these moderates are the grass under which they hide.
Hmm. True. Very well said.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
मैंने
Payal ji,
ज्यादा इसलिए नहीं
for
बोला because मैं बीच में भी I was getting emotional, I was getting choked. I just couldn't. It's really disturbed
Yeah,
me a
it's
lot.
very
The whole
disturbing. It's very disturbing. Seriously.
Muslim rapist, about Muslim rapists. Thank you
absolutely.
guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.